These metal cabinet poles were salvaged from a 100-year-old heating system. The tool marks indicate they were probably made on an automatic screw machine, the kind that's programmed with cams and stops. I really liked the shape and decided to use them on some small tool drawers I was building. They needed cleaning up, and I wanted to make some resin copies for additional projects. The first step was to make a mandrel to hold the poles while buffing them and to act as a sprue button for the molds. The groove you see in the mandrel will act as a minimum fill line in the silicone mold. A quick buff with sanding cloth cleaned them up. They look pretty good while still retaining their character. I then parted off the back of the mandrel and faced the back. The best looking pull was then threaded onto the mandrel end with a little plasticine to seal the gap. The squeezed out clay was trimmed off and wiped down with some acetone. This is the model that we'll use to make silicone molds. The sprue base gets a bit of plasticine as well. Then it's stuck down to a glass plate. I use small sections of plastic pipe slit up the side for the mold flask. A rule of thumb is that the object being molded should be at least a half an inch clear all around for the silicone. The gap in the pipe is closed with tape and the bottom covered in plasticine as well. The flask is then squeezed onto the glass plate with the model in the center. It looks a bit like this from below. The flask is filled with silicone following the manufacturer's instructions and allowed to cure. I had hoped that the underhang on the knobs was small enough that the mold would simply pull off. I was wrong, and I had to slit the mold up one side with a knife to free the model. I did not slit all the way from the sprue end down, stopping at the widest point. The mold is returned to the flask, which now acts as a casting jacket. The slice in the mold body is clocked off the split in the flask to avoid potential leakage. The first test casting was successful. I gave it a quick spray of primer to check the surface. There's a very faint flash line where the knife split the mold. It was easy to scrape it clean with a knife. I made 3 more molds to speed up production. The resin is easy to trim with a stationary belt sander. This leaves a very nice copy of the original, which could be glued down, but the 832 bolts that most cabinet hardware comes with would be more secure. The problem now is holding the pole while drilling and tapping. For this, I made a lathe chuck holder. I started with a round steel bar about twice the diameter of the knob. Into this, I bored a hole that matched the major diameter of the poles. It was bored a bit deeper than the pole. 2 rounds of gasket rubber in the bottom of the bore will protect the resin knob and provide some driving friction. As you can see, the base of the knob is smaller than its major diameter. The clamping cap will have to account for this. The clamping cap begins as a short section of round bar the same diameter as the main body. The first step on this part is to turn a boss on the face that's a good fit to the bore that holds the knob. A recess that matches the base of the knob is then turned in the boss on the clamping cap. The cap will be secured with 2 small knurled knobs so the cap and body are drilled for tapping and clearance holes. The holes in the body are tapped. Then 2 knurled knobs secure the cap to the body. When a resin knob is in the clamp, the gap between the body and cap is a couple of thousandths of an inch. That makes enough pressure to hold the knob in place for drilling and tapping. The clamp is held in a lathe chuck. The resin knob is placed inside. Wiggle the clamp onto the base of the knob and squeeze it down with the thumb screws. Then you can drill and tap. The opening in the clamping cap acts as a tap guide as well. The first resin knob copy is a success. Even the cat agrees. Resin can be colored when it's cast. It can also be painted. Here is a batch of these knobs that's freshly primed. This is the project that inspired me to make resin copies of these poles. It's a set of drawers for my leather working tools. These poles were finished with a rubbed bronze spray paint. I hope you find something useful in this little video, and thanks for watching.